Hey everyone, this is Ukumbwa. It's been a while since I've checked in this way, and I just felt like I needed to and wanted to at this time in the United States of American Settler Colony. We've got an organization called ICE bringing terrorism, violence, kidnapping, murder, deep physical and emotional harm to citizens of the United States of America. Um, this is nothing unlike times before where directly African people, Indigenous people, were targeted for this kind of heinous activity. Again, murder in the situation of African women, Indigenous women, and others. Rape culture and rape as a weapon of war was used and has been used, is still used against women, particularly women of color. But I think it just needs to be said that this is a horrid situation. Um, it is something that a lot of people did not expect to see. But again, for people of color, for African and Black people, for Indigenous people, this is not unfamiliar. It is absolutely unwanted, and we've been fighting against this kind of violence for a very long time here in the United States and around the world. We do have to remember that our struggles here, as I talk about Turtle Island, what we call North America, the United States of America, the struggles here are deeply connected with international struggles. We have to know that. We have to act like that. We have to have radical compassion and solidarity for other struggles in other places. When we think about what's happening in Venezuela and Palestine and Sudan, what's happening in the Congo, we have to be very aware that some of these players are the same players that are causing this deep oppression and exploitation, and particularly as we hear about in Venezuela, connected to extractive industries. We're hearing that as the current regime in the settler colony is talking about Greenland, and we're understanding that they have certain minerals there that capitalists, international capitalists, corporations, billionaires, if you will, are wanting to gain deeper access to. So, it is a time right now where we have to stay aware. We have to stay abreast of what's going on, where it's going on. There are a number of organizations that are doing some good work in organizing, or at least mobilizing, and helping people understand where things are going on, where these attacks and kidnappings and raids are going on in particular. So please look out for them. But it is a time that we need to be understanding of what has happened in the past, how people did respond in the past, how they are responding now in situations of organizing around this to protect themselves, issues of mutual aid, issues of just really being in solidarity with not only neighborhoods, but cultures and peoples and communities that are not of your own. So this is all very, very important now. I'm reminded also of that we need to learn. We need to keep learning. We need to keep studying. And I'm reminded immediately of the Black Panther Party and where they came from and what they were doing at the time and how they came to be and why they came to be. We know that there's at least the internet, social media is reporting that they're having higher levels of engagement, higher levels of presence. We have to look at that. Let's be critical about that. Make sure of who that is and how they're operating. That's great. In general, we need to support movements like that, and also be aware of what the history is. Again, it's a situation where we need to be clear about who Assata Shakur was and what she was doing at the time during her life. And unluckily, she has passed on and is an ancestor now. We can call her name for support. We know this. People like Kuwasi Balagoon, we need to understand what they were doing and what was going on in their political work. Also, we need to look at the struggles in these different places of Western Africa, of Guinea and Guinea-Bissau, also in Ghana. We need to look at the work of Kwame Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, Sekou Touré. We need to look at what happened in the Congo in the 60s around Patrice Lumumba, why he was killed with the support of the United States, the CIA, and what the effects of that are. And we can see that happening now in the Congo. And we see how the United States settler colonialism has great interest in Africa, and also other European countries, particularly France and other European colonial nations, are still interfering with Africa and creating systems of oppression there and extraction there. So, there's a lot that we can engage at this time. And one of the things we need to engage is each other. As I always say, we have to be doing the work of anti-racism. We have to be doing the work of anti-patriarchy, because if we say we are looking forward to a different kind of world than this, we have to do the work that allows us to see each other as fully human. We have to be able to not only rehumanize ourselves if we carry identities of privilege and power, as in men or as in European bridge white people, able-bodied people, cis heterosexual people. We have to understand how continuing to live inside the privilege and power of those identities is totally destructive to positive movement, forward movement, going forward into the world, I would say an old world, that where we're used to having more let's just say harmonious ways of being with each other, particularly defined by Indigenous cultures. But moving into a new world where we know we're in a system of justice and harmony and looking out for each other, systems where communities are strong, educated about themselves, where they know the history. We know that's a particularly powerful thing for African people, for Black people here, but also around the world. So, at this time, as much as we need to organize and as much as we need to stay connected to each other, we need to study, we need to learn, we need to understand, we need to breathe, we need to stop and ground, we need to take care of ourselves, we need to take care of each other. And that's very, very, very important right now. We can't do this without that. Another thing that comes up for me is something completely different, but totally connected to this kind of thing. I think it is the walk of, 20 Buddhist monks. I believe they're all men, and that needs to be said. And their dog Aloka. Got to mention Aloka. But that there's these monks that have been doing a walk for peace. I believe from Texas to Washington, D.C. And I think, and I've been seeing videos on social media, and it's been looking very powerful. People are having a really deep connection with these monks, and what their intention is, to bring peace and to resonate peace into the world. And I think it's a particularly important time for us to look at the connection between the kind of violence that the United States settler colonial government is fomenting, not only on Turtle Island in North America, but also across the globe. But also, how do we keep that in context with the peace walk? A lot of people are connecting to that, and they say they're feeling the energy of that. And I saw a post that, said something about, well, what if, ICE ran into the peace walk? What would their response be? And a lot of people gave that person flack for that, suggesting that there was some kind of nefarious reason why they said that. But I thought it was a really good question. Because if we are all in the same world together, and if we value peace, and which I hope has a connection to justice, because we can't have peace without it. We can't have peace without an acknowledgement of the harm that is happening, without an acknowledgement of who is doing that harm and how they're doing that harm and how we stop it, and that we need to stand together to do that. I think we're missing an opportunity to look at if we don't look at both together, I think we're missing an opportunity to unify and harmonize the different things that are going on in our lives right now. And the things that, at least through, social media, that we're saying are important, and it is obviously important for us to look at what, these lawless, ethikless, unethical kidnappers are doing across the country in different cities right now, particularly Minneapolis as I speak. But if we are headed toward a world of peace, what is the process to get there? And what would happen? Absolutely, what would happen if those energies that exist here, that are part of the founding of the United States of American Settler Colony, these issues of racism and patriarchy and the stealing of land, cultural genocide, direct genocide against Indigenous people, the chattel enslavement of African people, and the continuing enslavement. Look at the 13th Amendment, look at the exception clause in that. And also, the continued exploitation of African and Black people in this country. How do we put that together with what seems to be a deep desire to have peace? But I think a lot of people are connecting to this in a way that we're not seeing that there is a tremendously big, powerful amount of work that has to be done between what we're seeing, this violence, this high level of violence and exploitation that we're seeing, and the almost gleeful responses of particularly white men to this violence that's going on. But if the peace that these Buddhist monks are talking about and actually just being present about, I actually don't hear their voices as much as I see their embodied presence around it. And that's very, very powerful. I wonder if people will do that, will join that, not necessarily them in that moment, because I think this might be their moment that they need to express in their own way, but will people in this country or in other places continue to do that? I've heard that there was another man, I believe it was an African Black man that was also on a walk for peace and to raise awareness, and why don't we know about him? And I'll have to look into that to see what his name is, and connect with that more. But are we willing to even do that, to show up in our bodies in an energy of peace and hopefully of justice and hopefully of understanding of what it is exactly that's going on? And I'm reminded that I dropped a kind of an angsty comment on one of the videos of people showing up outside, one of the ICE facilities. And it's just a perspective I had at the moment. I really appreciate that people are doing that. I really appreciate that people are bringing their bodies to bear to show the resistance to these, to this exploitation and this violence that's really part of the fabric of this country. But that's exactly why I dropped a comment about why are we waving United States of American flags, when we're out at these actions. And I think people do not understand that it is exactly the United States of America that set the tone for this kind of violence in the first place. We don't want to sit with the fact that it's the United States Settler Colony that branded this kind of violence from the beginning. And that is the start and the home and the context of this kind of violence, and that the United States of American flag is not the antidote to it. It is the icon of it. That we have to be, but there's a lot of people being very comfortable in that, we don't want this, we want the country to be back the way it was. And when that is said, and I can't speak for Indigenous people, but I speak because of them in a way, because many of them have said, well, this country is not their savior. This country was their genocide. This nation is still one in which they're looking for their land back. And African people have not found freedom here. We have found great levels of struggle and unity and power and authenticity and yes and integrity, but we have not found that freedom that we say we're looking for. So this is not necessarily the context in which we can wave the flag of the thing that began the violence in the first place. But these are some of the things that we need to look at seriously if this is a time that is meaningful to us. And it should be. It is. I can see the angst in people, and some people are just starting to wake up to the fact that this kind of violence has been the fabric of that flag, the fabric of this kind of a settler colony, of this sort of, as a colleague and friend calls it, this rogue nation. We have to understand that we have to go deep inside and really understand what we're talking about, what we're doing, what our actions mean, what our narratives mean. We really have to touch in with that. We have to notice what our emotions are doing at this time, and if they're authentic to what peace and justice actually are. Are we still carrying narratives that make certain of us safe, feel safe? None of us are truly safe, and we know that because of what's been happening. We should know that none of us are actually safe, but clearly some of us are much more privileged and in a better situation of not being directly targeted than others. And yes, I'm talking about white men, I'm talking about white people, European people in this country, because we know, as it's been reported, that when, ICE shows up, they look for brown people, they look for black people, they look for folks with certain accents, and they absolutely bypass white folks. Absolutely. Yeah, I know what happened recently. I'm not going to even talk about it, but we know that happens, So we have to stay aware of how our narratives that may make us safe continue to oppress and exploit other people who may not look like us, who may not have the same national backgrounds, that may not have the same cultural backgrounds. All right. And particularly in that, looking at it with an anti-racist lens, an anti-patriarchal lens, and actually an anti-heteronormative lens, and an anti-colonial lens is going to be really important for us to gain clarity, to gain understanding about all this, and to really get to a point where our feet are on the ground, and we know whose ground we are on. And we know who we're working with, who we're trying to say we're unified with. We're not showing up in a way that we're dangerous to other people that don't share our privileges and powers that are unearned in this or any other society. So there's a lot for us to do right now. There's so much, and we do have to check in with each other. We do have to care about each other. And, when we know that we are in a place that has utilized racism, systemic racism and patriarchy as its modus operandi, as its way of being, its reason for being, we have to know that we are part of that we have to be able to get through that. We have to be able to dismantle systems of oppression and understand where that's coming from. We have to do the work, we have to do the study, we have to feel it, we have to embody this work, and we have to get clear. We have to get clear. And it's really important to do it now. And again, the things that we're seeing right now, especially in the United States of American Settler Colony, are not new. They're not new. Some new people might be seeing it now in different ways because it's happening in their neighborhoods, and that's great that they're starting to see it. But we have to continue to be clear. We have to study. We have to feel. We have to be spiritually sound and grounded. And we have to be able to understand each other in a way that allows us to come to greater levels of unification, of mobilization, yes, but of organization, and again, groundedness that allows us to work in an effective way to make the world the way we know it should be. There's work to do in that area. And if I can help, let me know. But I just wanted to kind of speak about these things, raise the issues of the kidnappings and exploitation and the violence that's going on in this country that's connected to that stuff around the world, to that same things around the world, how it's connected in short. But also, let's also think about that peace walk. And what does it mean? And can we bring peace with justice, not only to this land, I don't want to say to the country, but to this land and to the world at large? And what role will we play in that? And I came on here wanting to do like 5 minutes of something. It's like 20. If you're still here, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening to me go on. And I would love to hear from you. Let's talk.